The Haunted Texas series is taking over Talk About the Hill Country. We will be here every weekday morning from October 21st to October 31st. If you miss a story, hear it on Halloween night starting at 6 p.m. The broadcast is being carried on KNAF AM 910 and KFAN 107.9 Texas Rebel Radio. Our sponsor is the Mason County Historical Society. These eerie, sometimes gory, and always fascinating haunted Texas tales are being brought to us by historians and educators from the Texas Historical Commission, the Texian Blog, and the Texas Center at Schreiner University. These Texas tales are true to life and death, so listener discretion is advised. Now settle back and enjoy HC Broadcasting's presentation of Haunted Texas.
I met Ray Tice through a friend of a friend, and we quickly learned that we both shared a love of Texas folklore, especially ghost stories. He's been collecting them for a while, like I have, and he's even been to some of the spots, or haunts, to see if he could scare some ghosts up. He's been generous enough to pick out a few spooky yarns from his own collection and share them with me. He's a local boy to the Fredericksburg and Llano areas, so the tales he sent me are set in this region for some nice local flavor. Here's one of those stories now. This one's going to be a little bit darker. It's got some violence. It's about a real historical killer. So, fair warning, there's going to be some nasty things in this. Now, sit back and close your eyes, unless you're driving, and listen to the Blanco Horror. Almost every Halloween, the Blanco Police Department waits for the panic calls of passing motorists to come in. Over the decades, they've become accustomed to the annual pranks that are performed by teenagers about a mile north of town and along Highway 281. Most of the scenarios involve an individual in a cowboy costume, clutching a red-stained knife and standing at the edge of passing headlights in a threatening pose. Generally, though, by the time an officer responds, the prankster is gone, and all that's left at the scene are two old oak trees. It's an eerie scene, though, at least to the ones that know the history of these two landmarks. Here, at the tree with an arched branch, ended the darkest crime spree in Blanco County's history. The story of Albert Al Newton Lackey is a true Texas horror tale. It is tragic and disturbing, but a bloody favorite for local Blanco County folklorists who claim Lackey's blood-eyed specter is frequently encountered at the site of his death. Al Lackey was a 34-year-old resident of the north portion of the county. He lived in the same general vicinity as a number of his relatives and was always a bit off-putting towards most. On August 24th, 1885, Albert would end the lives of 6 people in rapid, barbaric succession. Despite having been married for a number of years, Al Lackey was considered by many as a sexual deviant. Young women never felt comfortable with him in their presence, and for a number of weeks prior to his August 24th rampage, Al was accused of quote-unquote seducing his daughter and getting her pregnant. This horrifically was not the first time Al Lackey had been accused of sexual misconduct. In 1884, Al's stepdaughter conceived while living temporarily at the Lackey household. After leaving the estate, she was supposedly the first woman to bring Al's behavior to light. She claimed that her stepfather was also the father to her child, but sadly, nothing was ever done about the matter, and Al Lackey kept to his ways. Eventually, Al's own family members vowed to hold him accountable for the pregnancies of the 2 girls. Many say that these repercussions are what caused Al Lackey to go insane. The tragic events of August 24th, 1885, started early in the morning. Al Lackey told his wife, Allie, that he was going to the residence of a neighbor named John Green to ask for a loan of money. When he arrived there, he found that Green was not home and broke into the man's house. Al stole away with a Winchester rifle capable of carrying 12 rounds. Lackey's first targets were his brother, Nathaniel, and Nathaniel's wife. When Al came upon his siblings' cabin, his sister-in-law was sitting on the porch and swaddling the couple's newly born child. His brother and nephew were a few yards behind the house working in a field. A solitary gunshot rang out from the front of the building, and unbeknownst to Nathaniel, his wife now lay dead. Her body was left on the porch, but their baby was found alive and still wrapped in its mother's blood-stained blanket. Alarmed by the gunshot, Nathaniel Lackey instructed his son to hide in a dense cluster of bushes at the edge of the field while he went to investigate. Nathaniel had hardly gotten up to the house when Al suddenly emerged from a corner and came charging forward. Nathaniel raced towards the shelter of a creek, but could not outrun his deranged brother. Al Lackey's nephew horribly had to listen while his father, Nathaniel, begged for mercy and received none. After murdering Nathaniel, Al ventured further into the field to look for his nephew. Fortunately, the boy was able to escape and started out towards Johnson City to find help as soon as his murderous uncle left the scene. Nathaniel Lackey's body was found later. He died of a single gunshot wound to the back of his head at close range. Only a little while later, a neighbor of Nathaniel Lackey's named John Nicholson had heard the 2 gunshots and came to the estate to investigate. Unfortunately, he instead encountered Al and was taken hostage and ordered to accompany Al to the residence of his next victims, the Stokes. The Stokes were Al Lackey's in-laws, and their teenage daughter Fanny was home with them at the time. Albert mercilessly murdered all 3. During the carnage, John Nicholson escaped on foot, leaving his horse tied to the porch of the Stokes estate. After the Stokes, Al returned home to continue his spree. At his own residence, Al killed his pregnant daughter Martha. He was then about to do the same to his daughter-in-law and his wife, Allie, but when he went to discharge the rifle at one of the women, he discovered it was empty. Allie and Al's daughter-in-law took advantage of the Winchester's empty chamber. They rushed Al together, but failed to see that he had unsheathed a knife. He stabbed his daughter-in-law first, a wound that would later prove fatal to the young girl. Boldly, Allie struck Al with some object that stunned him long enough to get away. She ran off immediately on foot for Johnson City. When he finally regained consciousness, Al knew that there would be no way he could catch his wife. It seemed apparent at this moment that Al considered taking his own life. A bloody gash across his neck indicated that this might have been the case, but unfortunately, we will never know. Rather than killing himself, Al seemingly started out for Johnson City. Whereas he had a horse, Allie had none. And it's possible that he hoped on getting to the town first to prevent Allie from getting to the sheriff. But along the way, Al came across a neighbor of his named Thomas Brunswick. Al Lackey decided he needed to devise a plan to figure out a way to somehow blame all of the events of the day on Thomas Brunswick. He left Brunswick near death on the trail and just had to catch Allie before she could get to Johnson City. Unbeknownst to Al Lackey, though, his nephew had gotten to Johnson City and already alerted the sheriff to his uncle's psychotic behavior. Deputies caught Al roughly 2 miles northeast of Johnson City, and he was already in a prison cell when Allie arrived to relate the rest of the story. On August 25th, the slain victims of Albert Lackey's trail of carnage were laid to rest at various cemeteries across Blanco County. In total, he had murdered 7 people, most of them relatives, and for no apparent reason. He was transported to Blanco, the county seat at the time, to await trial, but would never appear before a judge. On the night of August 26, a mob of between 50 and 60 vigilantes stormed the Blanco County Jail and forced the sheriff to surrender Al Lackey to their custody. Many of the leaders of this mob were also relatives of Lackey's, and they hauled him to the arched oak tree that still stands about a mile north of Blanco today. When asked if he had any last words, Al made a sinister reply. He said that he was not ashamed of his deeds, but was instead upset that he had failed to kill 6 others that he intended to murder. After those final words, Albert Newton Lackey was hanged. Although the decision to bury Lackey in the city cemetery was hotly disputed, he was indeed laid to rest somewhere towards the south corner. Gradually, over time, the site of Lackey's grave has been forgotten. For years afterward, the tree where Al Lackey was hanged was locally known as Lackey's Tree. People in Blanco can still point it out to you today. Plenty in the area fully believe that he still haunts their county. So if you happen to be driving along 281 between Blanco and Johnson City in the deep, dark hours of a moonless night, and you happen to see a man dressed in clothing not of this century and a crimson-soaked bandana about his neck, I wouldn't pull over if I were you to see if he needed help. If you did, you may find yourself staring into a pair of bloodshot, soulless eyes above a leering grin and hear a gravelly voice whisper to you, "I just need 6 more before I'm finished." Don't become one of those 6. Pleasant dreams.
Attention Hill Country residents. Join the Mason County Historical Society for our annual meeting on November 22nd at 6 p.m. in the Stribley Room of the Mason Library. This year, we're thrilled to welcome geologist Brian Hunt from UT Austin, who will take us on a fascinating journey through the geology of Mason County. Discover how our landscape evolved from ancient seas to the era of dinosaurs and even mammoths. Bring your rock samples for identification and enjoy refreshments as we delve into our local history together. Everyone's welcome, no membership required. For more information, visit us on Facebook or at masonmuseums.org. Let's find out together what's under our feet. Don't miss this enriching experience with your community. This has been a special presentation by HC Broadcasting, our Haunted Texas series for the Halloween season. First, thank you to our presenters, Ben Freiberg of the Texian Blog and the Texas Center at Schreiner University, and Shannon Smith of the Texas Historical Commission and Fort Martin Scott. A huge shout out to our sponsor, the Mason County Historical Society. If you love local Texas history, be sure to participate in the Mason County Historical Society's annual meeting on November 22nd at 6. It'll be held at the Stribling Room in the Mason County Library. Find out what's under your feet, geologically speaking. Check out their website at masonsmuseum.org. Want to get on the regular calendar for Talk About the Hill Country? Call 830-997-2197, email knafnews@gmail.com, mail to P.O. Box 311 in Fredericksburg, or stop by the studio at 304 East San Antonio Street. Hope you enjoyed your Haunted Texas.